You could declare the removal of LTR retrospectively to be harsh, dishonourable, or legally questionable, but you can't really call it racist. It is only racist if you consider all borders or immigration restrictions are racist. If the measure applies to foreign nationals of every ethnicity and colour, it is simply the expression of an independent nation-state. Yes, a foreigner is not a British national or citizen, and thus they are treated differently. It's the same in every country around the world, and it stands to reason. If you want to call it racist, then go ahead, but you condemn the whole idea of national borders. Of course, people on the far left do consider immigration controls racist. Starmer himself once wrote such sentiments back in his Marxist student days. To accuse reform of racism over this is simply playing the game of the far left, when such people will call Labour racist in the same breath. As mentioned, Labour have announced increasing the eligibility threshold to 10 years. They say they will require higher English standards and applicants to do unpaid community service. Before this, they announced they would ban visas for care workers, limit them for graduates, and restore the requirement for a degree. All of this will be, and was, attacked by the open borders crowd and dismissed as fascism. Trying to appeal to these types will not help convince voters that Labour are the moderate centre. Interestingly, the modern liberal left were perfectly happy to have an immigration policy which favoured largely white Europeans from the EU. No visa was required for them, while it was for the largely non-white rest of the world. That was never called racist, except by the hardcore socialists and libertarians. I'm not saying it is racist, just illustrating that the same accusation they level at reform can be turned back on them. Incidentally, Reform do say that EU citizens who applied under the Settled Status Scheme will not have their LTR cancelled, probably because they don't want to jeopardise the trade deal we have with the EU. The charges of racism are out then, dismissed as the smears they are. However, if we consider Farage's revocation policy from a legal point of view, it could be more difficult. It does not mean such a policy could not be implemented, though. In our system, as Zia Youssef pointed out, Parliament is the law. If a government has a large enough mandate to carry it through both chambers, new legislation can be made and existing legislation can be changed. If indefinite LTR cannot be revoked without good reason, then all a Prime Minister has to do is put the required changes to a series of votes, obtain royal assent, and hey presto. If Parliament decides indefinite LTR granted after 2020 should be null and void, they can make it so. The liberal left like to pretend universal human rights are untouchable and above British law. This is not so. Even in the case of international treaties like the ECHR, all a government has to do is use Parliament to extract us from these treaties. Labour have made out that hundreds of thousands of people will be deported under Reform's plans. The British ICE thugs in masks will start rounding up your foreign friends and neighbours, they imply. People could indeed be deported, but one, it depends on what form the revocation of LTR will take. Secondly, there will still be a route to living and working here. Assuming your LTR has been reached through a work visa, then you will either still have the same skilled job or will be perfectly capable of getting one. There will be a possibility of deportation, but still a chance of staying through a visa. There will also be plenty of time to prepare, and many with LTR will apply for citizenship before the next election. Of course, Reform have been on a journey with this issue. A year ago, getting Farage to even commit to mass deporting illegal immigrants was like pulling teeth. Reform didn't even propose a cap on legal immigration, and although they will cap these new visas, they still won't commit to a number. Farage was outflanked by the Tories on deporting illegals and threatened by Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib's activities, so he had to appear more radical. Even Labour was knocking at the door by acting far more anti-immigration than usual. Reform pledging to abolish LTR and deport legal migrants would have seemed impossible back then, but because of this pressure, here we are. So perhaps the real worry about Reform's LTR policy is that they won't actually be as tough as they claim they will. There are, as we've seen, various ambiguities in the policy announcement, and where there are ambiguities lies backsliding. I know one thing, though. I am happy to risk that and vote for reform if it means dumping Labour out of power and addressing the insane immigration levels before our home gets completely destroyed. If what they propose when in power starts to go too far, then we can scrutinise and protest it when it happens. Right now we are stuck on a precipice, and reform is lowering a rope.